Ancient testimony of Bongo TAWNEY. Ride on, Ancient One, ride on. Give thanks to His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie I, for itinual inspiration, guidance, and detection. Copyright Wisemind Publications, 2010. Bongo TAWNEY Ancient Testimony, recorded and transcribed by Rastafari, Wisemind Publications. Cover art by Ross Terms. Facebook.com/RossTerms1, RASTERMSONE. Layout and editing by Ross Scott, Word Sound Power Collective, Seattle, Washington. Word Sound Power Collective at hotmail.com. Word Sound Power Collective.org. Remembering Bongo TAWNEY, contributed by James Homiak, IRAP, IRAP, and Ross Iris Ions, IDOR, IDOR. Published by Wisemind Publications. Wisemind Publication at gmail.com. Proofreading, Empress Catrice McClure. Final edit, Ross Raveneye. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced or stored without prior permission of the publisher. It is only when man becomes master of his fate, able to determine his destiny, that he can be free from fears and inferiority. Such an individual or a nation stands respected by all. Haile Selassie I, July 2nd, 1963. University graduation. Wisemind Publications. Inspiration. Besides, it is expected of every one of you who have assumed this holy responsibility that the service you render is not founded on the mere struggle to earn your wages, but on the wholehearted understanding of the unfortunate situations of your fellow human beings, whom you should serve with sympathy, conviction, and faith. The natural origin of every man being man himself, and thus creation. The only difference lies in the opportunities made available. Haile Selassie I, September 3rd, 1965. It does not come easily to accomplish something which will always be remembered. Haile Selassie I, February 1963. Where are we to look for our survival, for the answers to the questions which have never before been posed? We must look first to Almighty God, who has raised man above the animals and endowed him with intelligence and reason. We must put our faith in Him, that He will not desert us or permit us to destroy humanity, which He created in His image. And we must look into ourselves, into the depth of our souls. We must become something we have never been, and for which our education and experience and environment have ill prepared us. We must become bigger than we have been, more courageous, greater in spirit, larger in outlook. We must become members of a new race, overcoming petty prejudice, owing our ultimate allegiance not to nations, but to our fellow men within the human community. Haile Selassie I. Remembering Bongo TAWNEY. Bongo TAWNEY, aka George Bent, was born in Kingston on April 20th, 1934. This was not only a tumultuous time in Jamaica, but across the African world. Marcus Garvey, marginalized by North American forces, would soon leave the island of his birth for England, and Italian forces were stepping up provocations for an invasion of Ethiopia. Leonard Howell, the first preacher of the Rastafari faith, would be tried and convicted of sedition this same year. In a few years, the widespread labor riots that were sparked in the Eastern Caribbean would run the full length of the arc of the Caribbean before they exploded in Jamaica in 1937. It was into this unsettled world that George Bent was born. Little is known by his peers of George's family or early childhood. But as he came of age in Kingston during the 1950s, he would be one of thousands of young black Kingstonian males who sought to establish themselves as survivors in the context of a highly discriminatory colonial regime. By the late 1950s, George, now in his mid-teens, was a plucky, comesome, hustling with his bicycle on the streets of Kingston by running numbers for Pick-a-Pow, a Chinese gambling game. His route included various neighborhoods in East Kingston and led back to Berry Street in Chinatown. As a black youth, his poor man's form of itinerant hustling put him in contact with various Rastafari yards and camps. One of these sites was on the bottom of Paradise Street in the east, and it was here that Ras Iris Ions kept a site of Rasta gathering frequented both by age mates and a few older Rastafari. Those who gathered there called their place Java. Eastonman, Cruchy, Sekleman, and Bullgrant were among the age mates of this group, where Fillmore Alvaronga, Douglas Mack, and Bongo Spence were among the older, more seasoned Rastafari who routinely passed through. Iris Ion states it this way: "Dim time our gathering was at Paradise Street, and it was there that TAWNEY started to join we. It was the middle of '59, and TAWNEY was assembling dim time at East Racecourse with him friends, like Ross Jeremiah. Through this it creates some visiting between Racecourse and we pon Paradise Street. But TAWNEY was plucky, a comesome dim time, and I was hitting him hard to dash away the scissors and comb. So it was through this influence that him put on him covenant. By Bongo TAWNEY's own account, he had acquired a copy of the Promised Key not long after this, and began to absorb its inspiration. This, of course, led him to the teachings of His Imperial Majesty. Self-reliance was an essential aspect of urban survival in these times for young Rastafari. This was especially true since most young males who began to grow locks were put out of their parents' homes and disowned. This familial ostracism, coupled with the routine difficulties of survival on the streets, gave special meaning to the bonds between those who came up together in Rastafari at this time. The group that coalesced at Paradise Street, and later at other well-known camps, was no exception. As Iris Ions explains, "For a period of time, TAWNEY, Cruchy, and I do fishing almost every weekend. We rent a canoe from a fisherwoman named Edna. She did keep 6 canoes, named Little Beaver 1, 2, 3, and we would hold one of these to do fishing beyond Port Royal in the open sea. So as you can realize, we had to be well versatile them time. Many Rastafari biographies acquire their meaning against the backdrop of the social and political upheavals of the times during which they unfolded. The period of Bongo Tawneys coming up within Rastafari. Rastafari is notable in this regard because it was bracketed by the Claudius Henry uprising in late 1959 and the Coral Gardens massacre in April of 1963. This was a desperate time for all Rastafari, but especially young Rastafari who came into the movement as dreadlocks. It was during this period that Ras Tawney began visiting the camp of Rastafari established on Wairika Hill by Iris Ions. This marked the formation of the group known as the Idyllic House, an iconoclastic set of young brethren who were on the forefront of several important innovations in livity within the wider house of Nyabingi. As one of the frequent visitors to this camp, Bongo Tawney found himself among its other notables, including Iris Ions, Eistenman, Ross Cruchy, and Ross Headful, now all transitioned. Dizzy Johnny, of Scottolites fame, Ross Rupert Reed, now in Paterson, New Jersey, Ross Marcus Reed, now in Baltimore, and Sister Ruby, Mama Yarna, now in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Members of this group were strictly ITAL and used nothing from the shop. In these early years, they were known for eschewing the use of money, trotting barefoot in crocus bags and heavy rods, for their a cappella chanting that set aside the use of the drum as part of their rejection of dead flesh, and speaking in a distinctive form of Rastafari patois known as Aitzvar or Ivar sound. As one of the co-authors of this language, Bongo Tawney would often drop cryptic sounds at assemblies like Ayasta Yuliai, Ayunkam, Ayadar Yao. Rastafari, the Nyabingi order is here. And he was found of pointing out, as he does in the video that plays in the Smithsonian's Discovering Rastafari exhibit, Rasta don't use you and me. It is I and I, for it is King Selassie I that live within I. So when we say I and I, we always put the king first. Between Tawney in Bakawal and Iris Ion in Wairika Hills, this group functioned as part of a Rastafari network that linked the East and West in City Kingston. This was actually typical of the organizational dynamics of the movement during this period, when mobile individuals served to link all camps and yards as they moved between different sites. In the case of Bongo Tawney and other like-minded brethren, this created a beachhead for Ital Livity within Bakawal. He was among those who looked out fiercely at practices that had continued for the early days of Rastafari, wherein goat feasts were held to celebrate the birthday of a brethren or to reincorporate him back into the community after a period in jail. Even though he would later become known as a master on kete, at that time Tawney declined to touch drums in that period because the idea of slaughtering an animal to head the drum conflicted with his austere Ital sensibilities. Like many other Rastafari, Bongo Tawney developed rural ties that either reflected family connections or the ways in which he sought to adapt his life to the evolving livity of Rastafari. As Iris Ions remembers, it was during the run-up to Jamaican independence that he, Ross Tawney, and a cohort of others that included Eastonman, Dizzy Johnny, Cruchy, and a brother named Marathon, relocated themselves to the bush for an extended period in the area of Mount Moriah, St. Anne's. This move was facilitated by a Bacawal brethren named Papa Lee Campbell, a well-known herbsman and farmer who controlled land in that area. Iris recalls that Papa Lee Campbell was a dreadlocks, well known in Egypt, Bacawal, them time, and we reach there, Mount Moriah, through him. We go and cultivate vegetable for the 7-night eye symbol in Bacawal. This sojourn was not only a period of natural living, but part of a collective plan to cultivate food and herbs for a 7-day all Bacawal Unity Assembly to be held concurrently in counteraction to the upcoming Jamaican independence ceremonies. Ultimately, this group contributed most of the provisions for this memorable event, one which included resident elders in Bacawal, like Pa Ashanti, Bongo Lloyd, Bongo Poru, Bongo Allen, and others. Through all of this, Tawney's link to Iris Ions, Wairika Hill Camp, continued. While considered by its members as a site of spiritual mediation and retreat from the ambient Babylon, this camp remained firmly within the orbit of persecution that was visited upon Rastafari during this period. Shortly after the Henry Affair and the government search for the desperados, the camp was raided by a contingent of constabulary led by Superintendent Gordon Langdon. 96 Rastafari and suspected sympathizers from the surrounding area were rounded up as part of this raid. The Wairika camp, however, continued and remained a site for night-long sessions of Nyabingi chanting and bonfires. Long before Bob Marley sang the lyrics, "I want to turn up my disco 'cause I'm feeling all right. I want to disturb my neighbor. Give me the full watts tonight." The all-night chants that reverberated from the Wairika camp functioned to colonize the area with Rasta sounds and to discommode the neighborhoods they lay below at the foot of Oliver Road and beyond off Mountain View Avenue. This included the proper working-class neighborhood of Range, the area where Police Superintendent Fullerton resided. The volume of chants and their echo off the hillside elicited his ire and that of others in the community, which led to an inevitable raid. Not long after the Coral Gardens incident in April of 1963, the Wairika camp was again targeted for an early morning raid, this time by a force of 300 police led by Superintendent Fullerton. Bongo Tawney, along with 7 other brethren, a sistren, and 4 children, were captured and jailed. In order to cover for Iris Islands, who was the only camp member to escape capture, Tawney claimed to be the father of Iris's young daughter. This prevented her from being remanded to the custody of social services as an unattached juvenile. News of the event spread like wildfire from one Rasta yard and camp to another across Kingston, and the trial of the Tawney and his cohorts was one of the more well-attended spectacles at the Sutton Street Courthouse during early 1960s. As the numerous Rastamen filed into the courtroom, the brethren were relieved of their rods by the constabulary. Judge Leslie Gale, renowned as a harsh judge, presided over the case, and in an act of contempt had the constable throw their rods down the courthouse steps. The evidence against the accused was slim. A single herbs chalice that was discovered by a young constable in the crook of a tree. When, at the time of the raid, the young constable demanded to know what this object was, Ross Headful, referencing its place in the tree branches, responded by saying that it was called bird's love. This bit of testimony was introduced verbatim at trial, much to the laughter and delight of the Rastafari visitors. Moments after this, a heavy metal-framed window behind the judge that had been propped open was slammed shut by a stiff breeze. Cries of "Fire burn!" resounded across the courtroom from the brethren who were present. TAWNEY and his co-defendants were all released without charges that same day. Following this raid and the court case, the Wairika camp was more or less abandoned. But Bongo TAWNEY's yard in Bakawal functioned as an alternative site for many of those already named, as well as individuals like Bongo Time. By this time, TAWNEY and his age mates had become among the most faithful young Nyabingi warriors within the house. Their sojourns at urban and rural Groundation sites linked them with names that are now familiar to many Rastafari. Because these sites were once part of a Rastafari cultural geography that no longer exists, even a brief list of places and names associated with these assemblies is worth citing. Moonlight City, Bongo Gaff, Easton, and George Irons. Welcome Drive, Waterhouse, Blackheart, Joss Stone, and Bongo Lloyd. Bella's Gate, St. Catherine, Bongo Herman. Shantytown, Foreshore Road, Bongo Granville. Trenchtown, Watto, Duffos, Porral, and Dermanite. Akiwak, Wakai, and Bongo Vic. Button Bay, St. Thomas, Bongo Ezekiel. Sunny Hill, St. Thomas, Bongo Smitty. Augusttown, Ross Historian. Freeman's Hall, Trelawney, Ross Daniel. Bull Bay, Bongo Gabby, and Wakefield, Ross Gunman. In 1964, Bakawal was demolished, and Bongo TAWNEY relocated to the Portland Cottage, Rocky Point area of Clarendon, where he has lived more or less continuously since that time. When His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I visited Jamaica, just one day after his 32nd Earthstrong, TAWNEY traveled to Palisados with Iris Ions, Bongo Time, Legsman, and Aistan. This was an ever memorable day in his life, and one to which he frequently returned in his own personal testimony. Bongo TAWNEY, still a young man at this point, felt both personal and collective vindication at the time of the king's visit. He once told me that His Majesty came and claimed his people through the Irites of Solomonic dynasty. All over Jamaica, he freed black people, and make we know him is our God and King. I can never forget that day. It was after Emperor Haile Selassie's state visit to Jamaica that Bongo TAWNEY began to move with Sister Pam and with Bongo Bigga, who in tandem were among the most faithful of Nyabingi harpists. After this time, Bongo TAWNEY was among the most faithful of all Nyabingi Impels, trotting over hills and valleys to virtually every Nyabingi assembly kept on the island. From Sunning Hill to Black Rock, from Angel Heights to Freeman's Hall, and from Pitford to Scott's Pass, he and his twin Irate Bongo Biga, were always on the duty, skillfully parrying the repeater and the funde in the heart of the Ayabengi. Within him from this time was also Sister Pam, who was his ever-faithful companion upon the trod. Along with the thunderclaps of Bongo Tawney's repeater, Sister Pam consistently contributed one of the distinctive voices within the Ises. Theirs was an iridical duty kept side by side, and one which served for decades as a model for other Rastafari families within the house. The late 1980s opened a new chapter of Jah works for the ancient. In 1988, he was among a group of elders selected by the Divine Order of the Nyabingi to represent the house on a mission to New York, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. In this respect, Bongo Tawney was among those who broke with the traditional Nyabingi code of separation to trod forth into the heart of Babylon to witness to the liberty of Rastafari and the teachings of His Imperial Majesty. This began with the 1988 with the Rainbow Circle Throne Room mission to New York, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. that was sponsored by the Smithsonian Institution. Even today, few brethren and sistren in Jamaica realize how critical this duty was to removing the Jamaica Posse stigma that had been placed on Rastafari in North America by the print and broadcast media. The following year, Bongo Tawney participated in the Smithsonian's Folklife Festival as the master drummer of the group that traveled, which included Bongo Time, Irie Ions, Bongo Sheffin, and others, and was among those who were formally received by the paramount king of the Ga peoples of Ghana on the final day of the festival. Bongo Tawney would go on to become one of the icons of the ambassadorial Nyabingi tradition that sent elders across the Caribbean and the Black Atlantic world during the 1980s and 1990s. In 1991, he was the featured drummer at a landmark program held in New York City at the American Museum of Natural History. And during this same year, he and 6 other elders, including Bongo Paidao, Bongo Sheffin, Sister Bubbles, Bongo Headful, and others, went into the Ross Records studio to record an album of testimony and Nyabingi Ises simply called Rastafari Elders. Formal Nyabingi missions to Barbados, 1998, St. Croix, 1999, Panama, 2002 and 2005, Chile, 2006, and Washington, D.C., 2007, would follow. All path-breaking events at which Bongo Tawney would inspire young brethren and sistren coming up in the faith. As part of the 2002 Panama mission, Bongo Tawney, along with Bongo Sheffin, Bongo Joe, and Ross Earlites, livicated the first Nyabingi tabernacle there and the first ever to overlook the Pacific coast. In what was undoubtedly the most meaningful and impactful mission of his career, Iwatani made an historic trod to Ethiopia on the occasion of Bob Marley's 60th Earthstrong. There he rallied with repatriated Rastafari from across the Caribbean, England, and North America. But more significantly, the story of his ancestral return to the continent formed the backbone of the widely acclaimed documentary by Stephanie Black, Africa Unite, 2007. While in Ethiopia, Bongo Tawney not only visited Shashamane and reconnected with Congo Rocky and Empress Baby Eye. He realized a lifelong dream in being shown the inner sanctum of the Emperor's Jubilee Palace. It was there that he confirmed the reality of a vision for the faith that he had received nearly 50 years previously. He described it thusly: "One night I find myself with a next brethren in a place like a palace with great columns. The brethren is anointing children with oil, and as the oil done, him ask me for bring a next bottle. So me carry the oil upon one tray and put it on a little table with a green top. As me step back, it come like me foot touch upon something. I turn round and realize is His Majesty right there with I and I. Sorry, Father, sorry, Father, sorry, Father, I say, for it's like I step upon him foot. From that, me come out of the vision." Bongo TAWNEY went on to say that when he entered the Jubilee Palace in Addis Ababa and was taken into the king's quarters, he saw that same small green table and remembered the vision, thus fulfilling a 50-year cycle of realizing the reality of his faith. At a Nyabingi memorial held in Portland Cottage on April 10th through 11th, 2010, Rastafari from across the island as well as from abroad assembled to acknowledge the exemplary life and works of this warrior, priest, elder, global Rastafari ambassador, and chairman of the Nyabingi Ancient Council. Present was a representative from the South African Embassy with a letter of tribute. Other letters, including one from the Smithsonian, came from across the Rastafari world and were read in turn. The memorial for ancient Bongo TAWNEY was not the first in Nyabingi annals, but it was the most heavily attended and perhaps most thoroughly planned and orchestrated. Those present with whom we spoke said that there were no less than 400 people gathered at Portland Cottage for this event. Bongo Sheffen, an elder who has moved closely with the ancient over many decades, put it this way: "It was a gigantic event. It was so positive and impressive how we honor Bongo TAWNEY. The people of Portland Cottage were astounded by it. They never knew who they had living amongst them until now. They never knew that a king was living amongst them. Across the width and breadth of the international Rastafari community, there is heartfelt pain over the loss of our beloved elder. It is certainly felt acutely here in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, where several of his growmates, including Iris Ions and Ross Marcus Reed, currently reside, and where he was much respected and loved. Let it be known that the works and livity of Bongo TAWNEY will live on every time that his name is called and everywhere that he is remembered. Ride on, Ancient One, ride on. Move across of borders and boundaries to no ends of creation. Jah live!" Pictured, ancients from left to right: Bongo Roy, Ras Shaka, Bongo Sheffen, Bongo Ken, Bongo TAWNEY. Utterances of ancient priest Bongo TAWNEY, recorded and transcribed by Ross Flacco Tafari. Collective Security of Rastafari Family. Haile, Collectiveness. Yes, Farai. Collectiveness is why I and I have to reason, to ensure among I and I selves. For as our Father tell us, say, collective security for surety. And we can't say we never did know, for we must prepare ourselves. So collective security must be maintained, ayah. For collective security is part of truth and right. The king tell us say, we must move collectively, and what we are doing must be collective, so that people can either stand. For you see, what we are doing right now is for a nation of people, not only for ourselves. For we are here to take our people. We are the Jesse at the hell gate. Still a call we people the other way. We have to show the people the collectiveness and the truth. How one's supposed to move within that one perfect love and einity and, you know, collectiveness. A man don't really keep up. No stupidness. You have to move collective. For remember that we are setting example for the people how them should live collective to a fullness. Collective security is something we have to maintain and keep up, ayah, to move collective and do things the right way. For what we do, the world see we quick, you know. So we have to make sure what we do it good and do it right and really show our younger brethren the collectiveness of the faith. That we don't really come to dominate everyone, but we come to live the truth and right of collective security for surety. For the King strengthen us in collective security. So give thanks and praise to His Imperial Majesty, Jah Rastafari. The liberty of Rastafari. Haile Selassie. Now, the liberty of Rastafari, you know, is an important thing. For the liberty is where we have to look to full first life from. But to know Rastafari today is not every head you see today with locks is really a true Rastafarian. For as the prophet did show we, that wolf going to come in sheep clothing. So when we look today, we see a lot of those. But for you as a Rasta man, if you live, you have to live an exemplary life. You can't just live anyway or do anythings. For we calling upon the name of the Most High, which is the upful Irits, that full creation, seen. And no one can fool me, for the truth live in everyone. Today, my brother, we give thanks to see where it reach, and we the ancient, is I and I who mold and shape this faith in name of King Rastafari. For remember, we never learned this in no college or nowhere. This was an inborn conception that His Majesty full first in man, seen. And we know, even here in Jamrock, yeah, what them called Jamaica, it was the most nobles of Ethiopia was brought here. That's why this faith did have to start right here. For the most nobles of Ethiopia was taken. We was the people that the prophecy even show you. We have a sea, what them call Caribbean Sea. We was the set of people. When our people was in Jamestown, you see, we was the set of people, what them say, take them, yeah, and carry them beyond the sea. That them remember Africa no more. The prophets show of the ends of the earth. Yet it say, bring my sons from afar, and I daughters from the ends of the earth. So we know right there in Jamrock is the foundation of this fullness of Rastafari. Seen? We never learned it in no school or anywhere. We were despised and rejected in the time when this faith arrived in our heart through the powers of the Most High. But give thanks today, we are the important person now, for we are their teachers. Even when I trod and we reason about food one of the time and tell people say, well, you know, if we eat certain food and thing, them say we are rabbit, for we only eat bush. Seen? Yet the whole world now is running down what I did show from such time what we get fight and beating for. Send all a prison for revealing this truth. Seen? For I can full a Iowa as a young man. I know you as a Rasta man could not leave Kingston and go to Spanish Town. You could be charged for wandering abroad without any visible means of explanation, as a man who born and grow in Jamrock here. If you look into a store, them charge you for vagrancy or waiting on an opportunity to commit an offense. All those was only Rasta man charge, seen? And we was the Black Heart man. For in naming us Black Heart man in those times, that would run people away from us. For those time, we used to learn that Black Heart man, a man who cut out people's heart, seen? So them brand us with all these names, to try to keep away the masses of people from I. But through the Iowa of His Imperial Majesty, and the liberty in I people would have to run come. Who was running away have to run come. So it is a great Iowa still. For we know, say, none of us, the saints and prophets, never had any easy time from such time unto this time. For we are not with society. Society always fight against us. You understand? I can remember the time when the government say get rid of this faith by any means necessary. Seen? Them test us many times. Them raid us, them fling we in a prison, them do all kind of things for we revolute against them. But we are of the wise mind of His Imperial Majesty. For we know, say, well, it is only for a time. Your system and your time must fade away, you know. So we give thanks to see this fullness. For Rome take nearly 2,000 years if you try to put him doctrine across. And I Rasta take 70 odd years and establish to the world. Seen? Way they take 2,000 years. Just take we 70 years to fulfill this power to the whole nation of creation. So I know this is the truth. This is the way and this is the light. For His Imperial Majesty is the light of creation, seen. For we know Him, say every knee must bow and every tongue will have to confess that Him live. Him come and tell us, say, that elect of every nation shall praise Him. And right now, I as Rasta know this faith is in every nation. Seen? Every nation in a Rasta now. Some true, some is not. But as Him say, make the wheat and the tares grow till the day of harvest. Hail King Rastafari, for He is the life and the strength, you know. On the same liberty, our way of life is different from society. For society have it them way out there. But I in this liberty, we don't deal with Christianity. And I don't look to the ways of the church. We look to the ways of His Imperial Majesty that show I traditionally. We are doing a traditional trod that marvel the world today. How come we know this? When this was something that was hidden from I? But you know, as the King say, nothing can hide in creation. Really, you know, this is the fullness of truth and right. I could remember Iowa when I used to tell people that I are Ethiopians. Them say, Uno go away. Which part of Uno are Ethiopian? Seen? But give thanks unto His Imperial Majesty when He come here in 1966. He bless us with His royal blood by saying, the black people in Jamaica and the people in Ethiopia are blood brothers. So there was no belief in that. There was a knowing that even our people did know that fullness, you know. When I see 1966, when His Majesty come here, I could remember I Man was the first man that touched the plane of His Majesty before it even stopped run. And you hear that His Majesty did wept to fulfill the shortest passage in the prophecy. The Negus wept. It was I who raised the chant, "The Lion of Judah shall break every chain and give us a victory again and again." Then you see the iceful run down His Majesty face, you know? So the trotting of His Majesty here, that is what bring off all downgression and police brutality off I. For the king did send one of them officer come ask some Ross up at the hotel why I put locks on I head. And when I show fullness of it, His Majesty said to them, "Leave them alone, for they know what they are doing." Seen? For we did get that blessing from the king. I will show a simple example. When I, as a youth, trotting, I saw only blackbirds in the field. But today, from His Majesty came, blackbird gets so important. Him live black supremacy, that him not in the field no more. All him do is go around and bathe and live at hotel and all them place there. So even the trot of His Majesty as King of Creation, even the black bird, move away and show a great fullness, that of black supremacy, that them only live on the love, even today. We know that Jamrock, is a special place. Why? Jamrock is the only place that carries a king's house, and His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I is the only king that ever trod into that king's house. So then we know we are the royal sons and daughters of Ethiopia, right here in Jamaica. Jamrock is the root of this Nyabingi fullness. So I reason now and say we need, what I really need in the faith today is love and respect each other. And loving and respecting each other, that will be a great foundation for us. For Emperor Haile Selassie is love. He is the first love. So I will reason with I brethren and sistren that this is the faith today, that we must make love the order of the day. Give thanks and praise. Wisemind Publications. Responsibility of the Nyabingi priest. Haile, the duty, Nyabingi priest, that one should, a person that keeps the congregation together. You understand? And in every house or in every tabernacle, there should be a priest. Seen? The priest is the spiritual administrator, that administrating to keep the congregation together in that one perfect fullness. That priest must be a person of understanding, a person that know much about Scripture and all them something, so that he can teach other ones. So those qualities, a priest have to have that type of quality, so that he maintain the congregation and respect him in the congregation, to how he deals with people and difference. We check it and know that it is 7 priests to fulfill the 7 candlestick of the fullness in these tabernacle. So then, to full a priest, we will have to see which is more divine in spirituality, and all them something to put in charge of the congregation. For we must have a priest to maintain the congregation in uprightness. The priest must be like a person like that. He's supposed to be the last one to think of war and the first one to try to stop it, to keep the congregation in a contrite heart, to know the fullness of his work. For we know is king, prophet, and priest. So the priest have a duty to maintain the congregation, to keep it in perfect order, to show everyone the fullness. You, the priest, have to live away exceptional living, proper, clean, exceptional living, so that people can adopt the ways to the fullness of truth and rights. You understand? So you have to really set the example as a priest in every congregation. The priests have to set a priestly example. The sacrament. Yes, Farai. You know, say in every denomination you have a sacrifice. Some use them wine and them bread and all different things, but we use the living herb. For the prophecy did show the herb is used for the healing of man. He put the grass for the cattle, and herb is for the service of man, that man will bring fruitful fruit upon the earth. So we know, say, herb is no drugs, like what people put it, especially the herb that grow in creation, as one say. It was something that really grow on Solomon's grave, and we know that Solomon was an upful and righteous man. So we know herb. Them only put a stigma on it and call it ganja, but we know it is herb, just like any other herb that a man would boil or drink. So I don't know why there should be a charge on herb, or that big stigma that they put on herb. Rich man out day is our same herb them rich after, because they can send it up on their plane and them ship and all them thing they and rich over it. But all we need is our herb to use in our church as our sacrament, and we should be exempt from any charge at all where herb is concerned. For we are not shipping it away and selling it. We use it in our church as our sacrament. The government set up a big committee the other day, and the chairman of the committee, the one that used herb within them church, should be exempt from being charged. But we see Rastaman is still being charged for a little spliff, get beat up and sent to prison and all them something. So we say a thing like that's supposed to be stopped. I suppose free with I sacrament within I church, for we are no threat to society. Society know that we are no threat to them. Them don't see a Rasta man with no gun and kill people. We come here to preserve life. We don't come here to destroy life. So we show the people them it is right to live and togetherness. So our sacrament, we're supposed to be free of any charge pertaining to our sacrament, knowing we use in our church as our symbol of sacrament. So I man see that we should be exempt from any charge. One perfect love in the name of King Rastafari. Rastafari global unification. Haile Selassie. Yes, Farai. We know today is mini mansion in Rastafari. But we know that the Nyabingi was the first trod and the first step of Rastafari here in Jamaica. And we have many mansions now, which the prophets say that there are many mansions. And if it wasn't so, we would not have told you. So we know that we have 12 tribe brethren, we have the Bobo Shanti, and we have other groups that's still forward. But we know say that the Nyabingi was the first tradition, the first of ones that reason about his imperial majesty, just like Leonard Howell. And we don't praise no one except Emperor Haile Selassie the First. For we know that there is a whole heap of diverse doctrine going around today, you understand. You know, say, is truth and rights going to win? For truth and rights is His Majesty, and it must win. So we are showing the world that we know that His Imperial Majesty is the Almighty, the Creator of each and every one, without any doubt. We know the King live and reign. So today we know of all the mansions, Nyabingi was the first, and all of them, if you check it, even some members of other mansions, trod from this Nyabingi house. For this was the first house that deal with His Imperial Majesty. So when I hear all about, and I just look on some South African youths hail the Nyabingi, yes, I man know the seed was planted, and I see the fruits of it today. Round and about, people reaping the seed that I did plant out there. His Imperial Majesty as the Almighty. So it realized now through people, for every nation now. One time, it was a black house thing. But today, when you check it, we see people of every nation trod forward to this reality. For this reality of truth and right must win. Nothing can't handle truth and right, you see? And we know that we are their teachers. For most of what I trod and what I say right now on radio, them say Irie and Aista I, all of those words being created from I Rasta. His Majesty create those words. Like I full I. When I was a young man, we used to say, a yankas a him unto I black ayada, meaning to say, give thanks to I black father. So His Majesty creates such words in I. Right now, it make the British vocabulary look away. From radio man, I use Irie. Television man, I use I sound. So we know I sound win, for it take the whole nation. Seen? So we know the truth and right have to be the winner. Nothing can beat truth and right. His Imperial Majesty is truth and right. For we know, say, will the whole earth have seen that the only kings of kings we see is Emperor Haile Selassie I. Yet even at the church out they, them preach the king under a generalship. For you will hear the parson man come out and say, upon his vesture it is written, Kings of kings and Lord of lords. There was none before, there will be none after him. But here, where the crisis reached the people, his name is Jesus. And we know Jesus never. The only man on earth ever did crown King of kings and Lord of lords is His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie. Seen? So we know, say, even the people out there in them church preaching the king, and don't know that them praising the king. For any time you say King of kings and Lord of lords, no other one can receive that praises away from His Imperial Majesty. Them only have the people them mind as fools to make people know the truth. You can't rule them anymore, but to rule the people you will have to try to fool them. You understand? But today it's not going to work, you know, for truth and right is already out there, and people is grasping so much at this, where I get so much beating for, throw in prison without a cause. Yes, the victory is coming soon. That repatriation have to be a must, and our reparation. We're not speaking of reparation with repatriation. We're speaking of repatriation with reparation. For we know reparation money have to go spend a yard, that we can buy tractors and things to make the words of His Majesty fulfilled. Africa awaits her creators. So the king did speak that of us. So we have that fullness to go and full to the continent, that what the king did say years ago is full now. By Africa awaits her creators. For it is I, the Rasta man out there, who keep Africa awareness in black people. Out there we keep Africa. Tradition we were beaten, thrown in prison. We can't change. Rastafari is the Almighty who live and reign for ever and ever. So bless His holy name continually. Jah Rastafari. Ancient Trod of Rastafari from the Iowa of Leonard Howell. Yes, Farai. So you can see from such time of even the prophet Leonard Howell bringing this faith to Jamaica, it was pure tribulation. For the system was trying to make I not to realize the fullness of the king. So when Leonard Howell come here, he went through great tribulation. he was thrown into prison. As the prophets say, some will be cast into prison for my name's sake. So we see all of them things, they really happen. For even as a young man, the way I trod to this faith is that one light I vision, that I and another brethren was in a big palace, and that other brethren was anointing some babies. And when the oil finished, that I was holding a tray with, he said to me, fetch some more oil. So I put the tray on a little green top table and make a step and feel my foot mash someone on them big toe. And I look, it was His Majesty folding his hand behind me. That was the vision. I wake up saying, pardon me, God. Pardon me, God. But I say, wait. God come look for me, and me mash him, and him gone. And far I, it was from that time I fool myself and started to say psalms. And when I go look into the prophecy of the same thing I see, I say, what is this? Seen? I'm going to show the eye the fullness. From I was 20 years I trod unto this faith and got that vision. And when the privilege come that I really reach Ethiopia, and when I really reach Ethiopia, far I see some manifestation, real manifest to I, that I know that His Majesty really provide those for I. Even two sisterns said to I, when you go to Ethiopia, what you going to do? I said to them, His Majesty give I a key, and when I reach Ethiopia, His Majesty will show I which door to put the key in. My first morning in Ethiopia, I see one of the hotel guard look on I, and see a portrait of His Majesty on my stomach. And he said to I, the king is dead. I said, you said it. I said, all of you are hypocrites, for His Majesty make you people in Ethiopia, never being colonized. What you saying to that? And you fight and persecute the Most High, seen? And in the hotel, and when I listen to the cathedral that His Majesty was crowned in, I hear some sound. The priest was on, Haile Selassie, I. But I say, but is His Majesty the priest a praise? The very next morning, a film crew come, for I start a film, the one that name Africa Unite. I start that film from Jamaica here, and when my film come and bring a brand new vehicle, and see anywhere I want to go, I told them I want to go over that cathedral. So when I first went there in the morning, him look and tell I that I must go and come back, for service was in order. So I went out and do some more filming, all about through Addis. Acquaint myself with the people them and show them, say, that when I really reach a jam down, how I will tell them how I see the whole of Ethiopia family here and thing. Finally I went back over the church, and when I reach in the church, that is the church that His Majesty was crowned, the St. George's Cathedral. When I went into that cathedral, the same Ethiopian come to I and say, come. And I follow him. When I reach the cathedral door, him say to me, take off shoes. I just kick off I shoes. And when I went inside of that cathedral, the first thing he began to show I, see toe row of bench in that cathedral. Male and female don't sit and mix. Female sit by themselves, and male sit up to the altar side. When I go up towards the altar, I saw the Abuna dress in full black, but I was only looking in one of his eyes, for he had his face against a screen, and his only one eye he was observing I with. And them send and finally call I, and when I went to him, the Abuna look on me and said, now you are going to go a place where no ordinary Ethiopian was ever being. Yes, I was taken into the Holy of Holies in that cathedral. I was shown a throne of His Majesty, and he said, from the king last sat upon it, no one else ever sat upon it. I was shown a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. Him show I say, the real ark is in Lalibela. And when I come out of the Holy of Holies, he took I around the altar 3 times, and show I, say, see altar made of ebony, see altar foot, lion paw, Haile Selassie. I just give thanks. He said, well, yes, you have priest here still hailing his majesty. He showed what every window signify. For on that cathedral you see his majesty, her majesty, Solomon, Sheba, and all the ancient generation of Ethiopia on that window. After I leave from around there and come in the ordinary setting of the church, the Abuna come again to I again and said, now, you have gone place where no ordinary Ethiopian had ever been. Then I leave and go Shashamani. It seems like an Iritz said to I, say, go back to Addis. So I just call my driver and just move back to Addis. When I reach into the hotel, no time I reach into the hotel, I hear the phone ring. And when I take up the phone, the voice said to I, your presence needed at the palace. I say, what? I just change up my clothes and really go to my vehicle and go inside of the palace. And when I find myself back inside of the palace now, seeing that same vision that I was telling the eye of, that I placed the water on, fire, when I go inside of the palace, are the very same place that I did vision, I and the next Rasta was in, when he was anointing down the baby Ayah. For when I look against the wall in His Majesty Palace, are the same little green top table, fire! Right against the wall same way, that I said to myself, yeah, my Iritz was here before. I even reveal it in the palace and show plenty ones from when I got a vision about this place, and now I come and witness it. So my trod in Ethiopia, I happened to see His Majesty governmental throne and his churchical throne within the church. So I just give thanks that His Majesty did made I go and reveal such. I take up an Ethiopian who said he was in His Majesty army for 40 years. He was one on His Majesty Goody Guard, and he went to Shashamani with I in the vehicle, and that ancient Ethiopian was with I for a whole strong. I and him rest in the same room in the tabernacle. In the night I hear him chant Selassie I. I said, but wait, this ancient patriarch? Now His Majesty him a hail? When the second strong when I was there, one morning him just get up and start cut him language. And I call an Ethiopian youth and say, tell I what this patriarch is saying. You know what he was saying? He said to I, him love when I say, Haile Selassie the first. But we must always continue that prayer by saying, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. And after him said that, he said, the king is alive. Haile Selassie is not dead. Haile Selassie is alive. He is alive, alive. So my trod in Ethiopia, so much things reveal to I, far I. For that patriarch give the strength, say, the king ever live. My trod in Ethiopia give me a lot of experience. The vision that brought me to this faith, I go there to see the fullness of it in His Majesty Palace, seen with little green top table. When I was in the church, they show me Empress Menen tomb, and them show me where some of His Majesty children bury. But the empty tomb of His Majesty was there all now, right in the same cathedral, in the St. George Cathedral. So I man behold Her Majesty tomb and the empty tomb of His Majesty inside of that cathedral. So I just give thanks that I was able to fulfill, so that I could be able to reason with my brethren, you know, with that fullness in Ethiopia. When I trod home, When I trod home, Congo man, when I trod home, I will chant for Jah when I trod home, chanting glory, hallelujah, hail, Rastafari, when I trod home. The conquering lion. The conquering lion shall break every chain. The conquering lion shall break every chain. The conquering lion shall break every chain. Give I the victory again and again. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain. The Lion of Judah shall break every chain. Give I the victory again and again. Wisemind Publications. There are photos of Rastafari Ancients. Wisemindpublications.com